So, Marc, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Let me share my screen because that could be useful. Yep, for example, this. Right, are you seeing this website?
Le Mois du Doc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's film festival, actually. And right now, I'm just showing you the front ends. We've just added like 150 films, a kind of catalog, as you can see. This website is built with U-theme, but it does not matter. And I have filters, which are from JFilters, from Sakis Blue Coders. And that also does not matter in the context of this session. But so basically what I wanted to say is that I have a number of films there with many custom fields. So actually you would not like to have to type, yeah, and also videos that you can allow. So you would not like to type everything from the backend, because 150 films times title, intro text, and like 10 custom fields, that's a lot of work. Especially that when they start to do that, not everything is ready from day one. So there's a first round, a second round, and then suddenly they get the link to the video, and suddenly they see a typo. Suddenly they know they have to change the, I don't know, the duration of the film because there was a mistake or whatever. So actually at any time there are so many things that they change that I wanted to find a way to make this automatic and to import the content. And actually, this is the point of this session. At the end of this session, you will be able to import your articles together with the custom fields to your Joomla website or any Joomla website directly from a Google Sheet. And this is made possible thanks to Joomla Web Services, which are commonly called API, but Web Services would be is a better term. Actually, all this was made possible because I was aware that when Joomla 4 was released, I was aware that Web Services were a great new feature, but I'm not a developer and I could not find any example out there of how to use it. So I was missing the first step to start to play with that. And actually what happens is that at the last Joomla Day, the German-speaking Joomla Day DACH for Germany, Austria and Switzerland, Peter Martin, who is also present here in this room, made a presentation that was exactly what I needed, because he presented a few basic examples, I would say, about how to create articles, how to edit articles, how to delete articles, etc. In this presentation, yeah, I did not mention, but you can find all the details, well, of course, in the Joomla Community magazine, but regularly I update my presentation. So if you want the very last version, because sometimes I discover a trick or something, or there is a new feature in the script to import. So the very last version can be found at slides.wordweb.be. There you have, there are more than 30 presentations that I made at different Joomla events in Europe and outside of Europe. So just go and find the latest version. And of course, if you play with the Joomla Web Services, if you read this presentation, if you have any comments, any suggestion, any improvement, feel free to shoot. I will be happy to keep improving this document. So I was saying, all started with Peter Martin's presentation at Joomla Day DAC. And coming back to Belgium, I was so excited to start to play further. And then I was working on this script and improving this script. And now I started to think, oh, it would be nice if I could import a CSV file, comma separated value file, because of course, if you, let me just show an example of this script. Um, okay, this is an example of article creation coming from Peter's session. Of course, if you have to type in a script, in the PHP script, the title, the alias, the article text, and the category ID, well, there is no gain of time, right? Then you're better off typing everything directly in Joomla's backend or front end. So I was thinking it would be nice if we could import from a CSV. Then I had a chat with Alexandre Élysée, who is a French-speaking Joomler from Martinique, so from the Caribbean. And he said, Mark, why even bother importing a CSV? Actually, you can just create a Google Sheet. This is online. And when you share a Google Sheet, you, instead of sharing the Google Sheet itself, you can say that you want to share it as a CSV file. So actually, instead of exporting a CSV and then importing a CSV, you can just, in your script, have a link, a direct link to your Google Sheet in CSV format, and that makes the script even more comfortable to use. But here I was starting the presentation, and actually, instead of starting the presentation, what I wanted to do was to start with the end. That makes sense, doesn't it? So I wanted to make a little demo. This is the back end of this website. And let me open a new page in the back end. You see, I have 136 films currently published in the catalog, and I have 4 unpublished articles. And these are my test articles. This is an article, yeah, because of course, you only live once. So I'm not doing this presentation from a development website. I'm working live on a production website. And actually, they've just sent a newsletter to all the cultural centers in Belgium. So if I do anything wrong right now, so just to tell you that I'm very confident in myself and in the script, right, to import, that I'm not breaking the website, whatever. So actually, of course, I cannot, we are live, so I cannot edit a published article. I'm just editing unpublished articles. So for example, during the Joomla Day France this weekend, I had 4 dummy films in this category, and film 1, 2, 3, 4, not very original. But at Joomla Day France, when I made the same demo, I just renamed, for example, the film 1 and renamed it to Demo Joomla Day France from Metz. That was a town where it was happening. And so here, let me go to that Google Sheet so that I start with a live demo. If I go to the, yeah, what am I doing here? Actually, what I more and more since Joomla, especially since Joomla 4, because it is much easier now in Joomla 4 to edit modules from the front end, thanks to this little cog icon where you can edit your custom HTML module. So what I'm doing here is that, for example, here I have to import films, places, sessions, and blah, 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 and this famous catalog. So I just create my own comments. And here I put a button, which is just actually a link, giving it a bootstrap class to make it look as a button. But just so that, because this film festival is once a year. So right now, in my favorites in Google Sheets, I have this catalog coming first. but in 11 months, well, I will have forgotten, was it my Google Sheet? Was it their Google Sheet? What was the link? Is that the production version? Was that the test version? So here in my backend, I put all the necessary links so that we don't forget next year. And then I have also another link to the synchronize button, which is a link to my script, which will import everything. So let's see this Google Sheet. And I won't mention every column, right? I have different columns. You will see that in the document, in the document, in this presentation. But some category, some fields are compulsory, mandatory, like the category ID. It's just like in Joomla. You cannot, or the title. You cannot save an article if you don't give it a title, right? So same when you play with the web services in Joomla, some fields are mandatory. And for example, here in the titles, I was saying I had 4 dummy articles, which were film 1, 2, 3, 4. And this weekend, I renamed film 1 to Demo Joomla Day France. And right now, a few minutes before this session started, I renamed film 2 into London Calling, live from London, actually. So right now, let's go back to the back end. You see here, we have film 2. Now, let me launch the script. So I just click here on the link to synchronize, link to my scripts. And it's asking me, because I'm cautious, it's asking me for a password. So I type it, an HT password. And here, yeah, the page is thinking, because actually my script synchronizes all films, so like 150 films. But so I don't have to wait for the result like here it synchronizes. It is synchronizing everything. If I just refresh this, yeah, we have it. This article has been updated. Here I only changed the title. Of course, I could have changed anything, publish date, some custom field value, whatever. Another way to see that it has the script has indeed been editing 150 articles is also simply to go to users and user actions log. Maybe you've never been there, but you can see what the users have done. And I've created a dedicated user to use the API so that it's not my own account, so that if I wish, I can just disable that user without disabling myself. And you see, for each article which was updated, I find it here in the history, in logs. So if I filter on London, yeah, I see that at my time at 6 p.m., 26 minutes, 15 seconds. So like 1 minute ago, I updated this article. If I go back to my script, actually, you will see that it's giving me some feedback. Actually, it does not have to. Actually, ideally, it would just show a blank page because the goal is, I mean, it's not an interface. It's just a script which is running. So here, for the purpose of the demo, or even in real life, usually I just launch it from my browser, but I could trigger it from a cron task or from other ways. So I don't need any feedback, but when we were making the script together with Alexandre, I was telling him, well, it would be nice to have some feedback so that the end users see, oh, okay, it has worked, or maybe there is some mistake because, I don't know, maybe at row 3, there was a special character in the text and the script crashed or whatever. This can also happen. So here I indeed see that it has processed, the script has processed every single line of my Google Sheet. Right? Okay, so far. So now that we've started with the end, I can go back to the start and explain it step by step. Let's go to the presentation itself. So I'm giving it at the start all the useful links to Peter's Martin's session, which was really like the spark which triggered this work in his presentation. Then also Alexandre Élysée. To be honest, well, actually, he's the one who wrote the script, right? But like every time I was saying, "Oh, it's perfect," and I was being honest. And the next day I was thinking, "Hey, maybe it would be nice if the script could also do this or that." So every time it would answer, "Oh, okay, I have no time today," but a few days later it would come back with a new version. And again, I was saying, "Oh, now it's perfect, really." And day after, I was thinking, "Hey, I have a new idea, Alexandre. Maybe we could also do this or that. Like, for example, could we have a possibility to not synchronize all the rows in the Google Sheet? Here, I was having only, as I was saying, 150 films, for example, but I have another website where I import and synchronize 3,500 films. So of course, if you just change a typo, correct a typo on row 3,500, you don't want to go through all articles again and again. So this is typically an example where I was saying to Alexandre, "Hey, it would be nice to be able to filter," and then sometime later it was coming back with a new version of the script. Um, so, by the way, I'll make a pause here. Um, just go to this link of Alexandre, right, on GitHub. So github.com/Alexandre Élysée on this J4 API example. And please, right now or right after this session, just click on the star, right? You're doing all this for free, of course, just to have the Joomla project, to have in an open source spirit. So the only return, so to say, is got are those little stars. So please just go and put a star on this repo. It would be very nice from you. Then, first things first, actually, before using the Joomla API, you need to create a super user. Only super users at the moment can use the API. It is meant, well, actually, the idea is that very soon we could have ACL, so access rights, also built in the API. But at the moment, just to make it simple, I would say that only super users can play with it. Alexandre made a note here that it's not exactly true. You could also play with the API, the web services, even with non-super users, but I mean, it's a technical consideration. So what you need to do is create a new user or use your own account. But as I was saying, it's better maybe to create a dedicated user. So that's just the regular user creation, right? So of course you want to give a strong password. Of course, you want to assign this user to the super user group. And then if you save that user, you will get this, right? If you go to the Joomla API token tab, you will see this user. Well, okay, at first you see that this user does not have a token yet. Then if you save, now you won't see the token yet. It will say you cannot see the token for users other than yourself. So it's meant to be like that. A super user cannot just be curious and go and copy paste the token of somebody else and then do things in Joomla and pretend that you did it, right? So actually, you have to log in as that user to be able to see the token. Now, if you log out and log in as that new user, and you go to this Joomla API token tab, you will see the token, the famous token. No need to copy it. I changed it, of course. This was just a demo at the time. So this was the basics. In anyway, you have to create a user and get this API key. Then some terminology just to make things, because the word we would use in the Joomla realm to create an article is create, but in the context of an API, the technical word is post. So update in the Joomla word, actually in an API, you would say patch. And when you say that you're pulling or fetching articles here, you would say get. So now, let's suppose that we have a fresh website with no articles yet. You can go to, well, I'm giving the links there. And I won't be too long on that because all those scripts are ready to use. You just create them. You just replace the API token. You replace, of course, the URL by the real URL of your website. So you just adapt those two things, right? The URL and the token. Maybe you want to adapt the category ID. Here it's 2. It is Joomla's default for the uncategorized category. So just choose an existing category on your website. And actually with this little script, which is just basically saying, okay, let's have an array. In this array, we give the title, the alias, the article text, which is a combination of intro text and full text, right? The category ID, the language, because that's necessary. For example, we could also add any field, any field which exists by default in Joomla, even without custom fields, without speaking of custom fields. Like there is a meta description field in Joomla's interface. If you go to the database, you will see that the name of the corresponding column is metadesk. Well, it's quite obvious, right? The meta description is called metadesk in the database. Same for the meta keywords. It's called meta key in the database. So start the date for the start of the publication in database is publish_up. End of publication date is publish_down. So actually, you could enrich this little array with all the native things in Joomla, fields in Joomla. And then there is a little block after, well, which is just a technical part, calling your website and throwing with the correct header and everything, and creating the corresponding article. So there is a difference between intro text, article text versus intro text and full text, as I was saying. So actually, you can use article text, and if there is some read more in it, which in HTML is HRID equals system-read more, then it will be split automatically into the intro text field and the full text field, which are two different columns in the database. So the necessary fields are the title, the article text, and the category ID, and the language. If you want to execute this script, so you can just copy it and put it anywhere, not even on your own website. It could be, this script is autonomous. It could be put on any server out there. Given the fact that you mention the URL of the destination website and the API key of the destination website, it will know where to put the content. So it does not even have to be on the same website. And to execute that script, you would just, well, if you named it london.php, you will just open the corresponding URL, right? You open your browser and you put the corresponding URL. And in this case, it would give you the feedback after it has run, because there is some echo, blah, 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 to display this as a confirmation. The same way, so after that, if you refresh your article manager, you would see that you have a new article. So that's the basics, and I will go quickly on that because that's all explained here. And the main topic is to see how to import from the Google Sheet. But if instead of creating, you want to patch, you want to update your article, actually is just basically the same little script, except that it will say patch instead of create add post, sorry. um, so same story there. And of course you can also play with custom fees, and that's very nice because like if you would ask me, okay Mark, please write a SQL query to import and to create an article together with its custom fees. The custom fees are in different tables and it's more complex, right? Uh, Here, if you want to add, suppose I have a custom field called temperature, okay? And I want to change my patch script, so the update script. All I need to do in the array, I would just add a new line saying temperature, which is the name, so the alias of the custom field. And for example, here it's a text. Let's say it's a text custom field. I would type anything, a sentence, 15 degrees Celsius. So in practice, it gives this array. Now, if I trigger that script, if I launch that script, it would directly fill in this custom field as well. So it's very easy because it's just title is this, intro text is that, full text is something else, and my custom field is this. Very easy to write, very easy to understand. Um, right, and of course, you can also fetch, you can also display your Joomla articles with an API. And then you use get. So basically, again, it's the same little script, but with a get. And after that, you would have, you can even filter by state or filter by category, etc. I'm giving all the details there. And after the script has been executed, you would see the corresponding articles detail in JSON format. Right, so, and of course, you can also delete Joomla articles using the web services. So, now that we have all those basic scripts, and it's the same story for our own script by Elise and myself, how can we launch them, any of those, automatically? Here I was always launching them manually, calling the corresponding URL, but we could automate that. For example, you could call this, okay, in any piece of code, of course, you could call this URL, or you could set up a cron job, either with as a real cron job from your host or from some online cron service. But there is something really nice in Joomla, which is a task scheduler. And it could be that you've missed that excellent feature, which came together with Joomla 4. So actually, maybe if you missed it quickly, I explain where it is. So if you go, let me just go show it live. If I go to System and I go to Task Scheduler, actually, I can create a task. And there are different types of pre-existing tasks, or you can download some extra ones, like if you want to check in all your articles, there is one task available on GitHub by 024, for example. And here, the task I want would be a get. So when I want to create a cron task, I could do it from the Joomla interface. I would say, okay, every 2 hours, I want my synchronization to happen, and I would type here the correct URL, and I would give it a name, and then it would be easy, because you could say, even your end users could say, oh, now we disable it because the the festival is over, so it will be quiet for 10 months, and re-enable it later, or change the parameters. So it's easier to do it there than if you have to go to your host and remember where it was set up. Um, Coming back to the presentation, so that's when you use a task scheduler. Something else, you could say yes, but suppose you put the script on the same website, or suppose somebody knows where this script is. This person could just bomb my site and call that script every minute. Okay, if you want to protect this script, you can do it. You can create an HT password file. So for most servers, you can create an HT password, which password protects a folder or file. So here I'm explaining how to do it. And you can also say, okay, I want to require a password, but if a human calls that URL, that's fine. But what if precisely you followed my advice and created a task scheduler? The task scheduler would call the script and it would be blocked by the HT password. But of course, what I want to prevent um, is somebody else to call that script, but not my own server. So I could, for example, say that this password is only when it's not the IP of the website itself calling the script, or well, localhost, which is 127.0.0.1. Um, that's I'll give all the details there. If for some reason the API token has been changed, is not valid anymore, is revoked, then if you run the script, you would have such an error message like forbidden. Or in Joomla, if you enabled, maybe you don't know that, I will show it. Um, in the global configuration, in the logging, you can say what you want in the logs, and you can say you can enable the log almost everything. And that's what you want to do if you run into issues and you want to have a maximum of details. If you enable this in the folder slash administrator slash cache, you will have a file called, well, everything.php, giving all the details. So how do I go and read that file? Of course, you can use your regular FTP software, or use the file manager of your host. What I do is that I use this very nice little plugin by Yannick Gaultier from France, who is also the author of the developer of 4AI, of 4SEO, all the 4 extensions. So let me filter, no, not on 4AI, on 4log. Yeah, that's a free plugin. You can just edit, and if I click on view here, well, I will have the details. For example, here it tried to update, and I have all the potential errors. So like if and I close that, suppose that my API key is revoked, I will also see it there, for example. Now, the core of the session, using the Joomla API to import and update the articles directly from the Google Sheet. I explained the ID in the introduction, and as I was saying, as time passed, uh, we added more and more features into that script. So I was saying you don't need to export and import. It reads directly your Google Sheet. And by the way, one little thing is that you've probably already noticed if several people work together at the same time in the Google Sheet, if somebody else types something, I see it live, or maybe 1 second after, but I mean, it's live. The CSV file that Google Sheet generates is only updated like every 5 minutes, something like that. Sometimes it's just 10 seconds, but I want to say that they have a kind of cache on this CSV file. So if you edit your CSV file and run your script immediately after, there are chances that Google Sheets has not updated your corresponding CSV file yet. So you can count like up to 5 minutes for this. Um, then I was saying, yeah, the script was made, we added features. At first, the script was made just to import into one website, but actually with one Google Sheet, you can, there is a new column to say, okay, I want to, here I called it MDD. It stands for Moi du Doc, the name of this website, but each line could be sent potentially to a different website, right? There is an array in the script where I can say, okay, I define, I don't know, I have 7 websites, so 7 URLs and 7 API keys, and each row independently in the Google Sheet could be sent to potentially a different website. Other features. Yeah, we made it possible to import custom fields, but also then we had special cases because if you know, there's also the intro image and full image, which are which have a JSON format in the database. So it's also able to manage that. Same for URL A, B, and C. It's also a JSON format in the database, so it can also handle that. We can also import custom fields allowing multi-selection, right? If you have a custom field of type checkbox and you need to import different values, that's also possible. Also custom fields of type subform, so because that is also a JSON format in the database. So many features in that. So the first thing is to create a Google Sheet, of course, um, and to have a look at the script that you need. So if I click here, I will open the script. Maybe I should unzoom a bit. Yeah. That's a full script, but actually, if you see what Alexandre has made, actually there are more things because there are plenty of scripts. There is a bunch of scripts using the Joomla framework because some people are saying, oh yes, but it's nice your script is independent of Joomla. It can be executed from anywhere else. So that was my point, to have such a script. But some people were saying, yes, but what if we want to run this from within Joomla? So then you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You can use the Joomla framework, which allows to do that. So that's why we have 2 families of scripts: the ones using the Joomla framework and the ones just don't using the Joomla framework, so that you can run from anywhere. So as you can see, the one on which we have worked the most is the row script, the independent script. And if I take that family, you have plenty of examples. So if you want to have an idea of the structure, you need to create in a Google Sheet which columns you can open the sample data. And if you take the most recent one, it is this one that you want to use. What that you want? You can use any of them because they all do different things. There is one script allowing to import from, how is it called yet? From Airtable, yeah, sorry, I was forgetting the name. So there is one script allowing to import from Airtable and everything, but the most advanced script is this one, allowing to import from the Google Sheet. So basically the most recent one, if you want to identify it. So if you go there in that script, you will see different things that you will want to, maybe I should open it here live so that it's really the very last version. I zoom a bit then. Um, so as you can see, as I was saying, um, here it is set up to be able to import or synchronize articles with 3 websites. But it could be 20, it could be one. In my case, it's always one. So I delete the extra lines and I just put here, uh, that's my MDD in my file. It's what I put in the column to identify to which website I want to send the information. I just put the URL of the corresponding website. And then I need also to mention the token. So in my case here, I put MDD and I put my API key. Um, then if you use custom fields, you can also, well, custom fields. Let me show you an example, a real life example. Here I have plenty of extra columns, like for duration of the film, or a column with a URL for the YouTube trailer or the Vimeo trailer, right? Or also who is the movie maker, the name or the company or whatever, or the year here. So for all these things, we have, where is it here? We have a variable called custom field keys where you just add them, right? If I have a custom field, this was for a menu example, with coffee, with dessert, or blah, 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 whatever, you just mention them all between, um, between quotes and separated by a comma, and that's it. So in my case, it would be year, comma, movie maker, comma, YouTube, for example. Then there's a silent mode. As I was saying, we don't necessarily need any feedback when the script runs, but if we want to check visually whether everything runs smoothly, well, the one I prefer is one then, because it displays like this, just one line of feedback for each row which was processed. But actually, if you want more details, because maybe there is an error in some custom field or whatever, then you can choose two, and then you have more details. Then that's also another nice feature, like for a printer, when you print a document, where you can say, I only want page 2 and then page 10 to 15, but also page 2 to 1 or 1 to 2, but it works if you write 2 to 1. So it's really flexible so that you can limit the rows which will be imported or created or synchronized. And I think that's it for the configuration, the customization of the script. Let me go back here. Um, so yeah, when your Google Sheet is ready, actually, I was saying you just copy paste the link. Let me just show it to you so that it's clear. I apologize. My computer is in French, so Google Sheet shows in French. But if you click on File and then on the Share icon, the Share menu, right? You have Publish on Web here with a little word icon. If you click there, you have a pop-up. On that pop-up, you can say what you want to share. Is it the entire document, or do you only want to share a given sheet? Well, typically that's you want to do is to specify the sheet so that even if you reorganize your document, your Google Sheet, it will still point to the right sheet. Then instead of sharing it, and that's the trick, instead of sharing it as a web page, we can share it as CSV, as you can see here, even if it's in French, right? And then it gives me the correct link to share, right? So it's not, it's as easy as that. And I'm giving the screenshots there. Here I already explained the customization that we made. So I think that yeah, something I forgot to mention. I have a column which is called ID in my Google Sheet. And here I put it first. Yeah, one thing to mention, the order of the columns has absolutely no importance. The script is smart enough to identify each column, right? So if your end users say, yes, but I don't know, the column cat ID, maybe they would never use it because you have pre-filled it with the correct category ID, or the state is published, unpublished, 0 is unpublished, 1 is published. Language, okay, like in my case, for example, all these columns here could really be hidden or put at the end because my end users will never touch them, or I will take care of it. So you can move them as you like, it does not matter. But coming back to the article ID, how does the script know whether you want to create an article or to update an article? Actually, if you put here a valid article ID, like in this case, let's just check the London calling article that we updated at the start of the session. Let me close this, go to the articles. A nice tip, if you type ID and the number, it's a nice way to filter directly in the articles manager. Oh yeah, it was not that one, it was the next one for Jug London, right? So here, in my case, as you can see, this article has ID 478. So that's why after creating it, I mentioned here the ID 478. But if I wanted to create a new article, let's suppose I go to the end of the file and I have a new film to add. Well, I could fill in all the rest, right? But actually here, I would just put 0. When I put 0, the script knows that that article has to be created. So that means, of course, the first time, suppose you create all your articles, you have zeros, typically you have zeros everywhere in your Google Sheet. Suppose you run the script, everything goes fine, you've created 150 articles. Well, before running that script another time, the same day or another day, don't forget to come back to your Google Sheet and to add the corresponding article ID. Because otherwise, if you leave the 0, every time the script will try to create that article. And the nice thing is that the script is smart in that regard, because actually, as you know, when you are in Joomla's backend, if an article has the alias, let's say, London, and I create a new article which has another name, but I want to give an alias which is already taken, like London in this case, the Joomla's interface, the backend, would say, no, it's not possible, this alias is not available. So here, what does the script do? It could be when I type here the alias of the for each film, it could be that by accident I had already an article having the same alias. Actually, the script runs twice automatically. It has two loops. It goes first through all the articles. It tries to create them or to update them, but if there is an error from Joomla, well, the error could come from different things, right? But actually, it would run a second, it will loop a second time through all the articles which were rejected, trying to change the alias. It would add a random number at the end of the alias that you required, so that if indeed the error was about the alias, the script covers you, right? It will be able to create the article just by tweaking the alias, adding some random number, but at least it's created and then it's easy in the backend. You will quickly see them. And that's it. So don't forget after you run the script for the first time to change your IDs. I'll just delete those lines because it was just to show. Um, yep, and we are almost there, I think. So there are two loops, as I was mentioning. Um, what else? Also, you can go quickly for some more advanced stuff, like you can also add publish down, publish up, featured down, or any custom fields. In those custom fields, if you have a date, you need to format it like the technical format, which is year, months, day, hour, minutes, seconds. Um, and also, what I regularly do, I use the regular labs. There is a custom field made by regular labs, which is called articles, which allows, it's a custom field allowing to select another article. So typically for my movies, I could have articles for movies and then uh, articles for movie makers. And I could, for each film, select the corresponding movie maker or something else, or the venue if it's a theater or whatever. So I used a lot, and this also works with it. So actually, it's very handy. Um, Let me see if there is something else important to mention. Yeah, here I give more explanations about all the fields which are in JSON format. Uh, I also have some special cases like that I discovered because um, every time I was using the script myself, everything was working fine. Then my end users would would fill in the Google Sheet, and every time there would be issues like, and one of those I mentioned here those issues so that you don't have to discover those tricky things by yourself. Uh, I don't know, maybe some custom feed is required, and the people just leave the cell empty. Well, if it's required, you have to think as if you were in Joomla's backend. If you don't fill in a title for an article and you click on saved, it will be refused. Um, if there is a required custom field and you leave it empty, same story. Joomla's backend will tell you, no, there is a required field. So here is the same story, of course. Or sometimes you have a conflict caused by a third party. In my case, I was playing with a well, it doesn't matter which one, but with a plugin and looking at the log file, I discovered that there was something wrong. So actually, as soon as I disabled that third-party extension, the script would work fine. Another case, I was having like uh, I don't know if it's in all languages, but normally there is a classical quote, right? Which is I don't know how to call it, vertical, straight quote. But in at least in French or maybe in some other languages, there is this kind of curly quote, and this curly quote will be interpreted by the code or by PHP or whatever by a double quote, meaning that the script would just crash. It would think it's the end of the cell or whatever. So, yeah, or also, at least in French, instead of writing dots, a triple dot at the end of a sentence, there is this unique character which is condensed triple dots. Well, that special character also crashes. Um, so these are little things that I mentioned. Also, a trick, for example, because the more I use it, the more I have special cases. Some people were, in a Google Sheet, you can, especially if you have the intro text or the full text, you could want to type multiple sentences and then have real paragraphs, like separated paragraph, or have a break line inside. So in Excel or in Google Sheet, what you can do when you are in a cell, you type Control Enter. I'm speaking for Windows here, and the shortcut with the keyboard, Control Enter, and visually it goes to a new line. But if you import that, well, there is no HTML. So, well, it would just put everything in one row. So if you really want that, I just mentioned here a little trick. You could add a formula in your Google Sheet to say, okay, if there is any control enter, which technically is \n, right? To go to the new line. Then with a regular expression, I replace it by a real paragraph so that actually when it's imported, I have real HTML paragraph. So that's a final tip. I mentioned, I think I've covered it all. And for the rest, as I was mentioning, everything is covered in details on slides.wordweb.be. So that's it.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
In exactly 60 minutes.
Any questions? While people are thinking and typing, my one thought I had was, could you not use Markdown language and then interpret that as it's pulled into the Joomla article? That would allow you to use H1, H2s, H3s, and do that. It might be quicker for the people to write it in the documents then.
Yeah, at least for you or me, because we know what Markdown is. That my end users have no clue.
No,
But I
okay.
know I've noticed, you know, in TinyMCE you can enable Markdown.
Yep.
It's a standard feature. Well, you just need to enable it in the configuration of TinyMCE. But there, actually, if you type something in Markdown, as soon as you finish the line and you press enter, it is converted into HTML. But in the article itself, once it's converted into HTML, it is HTML. You cannot see any Markdown.
That's true.
But here, if I put Markdown as such in the Google Sheet, I think it would be imported as such. And I think that you would need to go to edit manually the article and press enter at the end of the line so that TinyMCE would
And there
trigger
might
it.
be a Google Sheet Markdown to HTML converter for Google Sheets.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah. Or maybe then, okay, maybe that's another feature of the script in the future to say, oh, it can interpret on the fly Markdown and to generalize this indeed.
Yeah.
But as it is, I don't think that as it is, I think you can do it, but then you have to edit the articles manually to press enter. Or somebody has to go into the code and make a pull request and a suggestion and or something.
Any questions, anyone?
Yes, I have one. What if you have
Peter is stronger than me, so I cannot answer his questions.
your script? It has a sort of check if it already exists, and then it will update, and otherwise it will create a new item. But will it do a check before you do that, or will it just update everything?
In which case would it make a check?
When you run it and you have the Google Sheet, will it just check all the Google, all the items in the Google Sheet and change them in your website? Or only when they have been changed in the Google Sheet, when it's different?
Oh, no. Oh, it runs, it will update everything or create everything if you've put 0 as ID. But that's why we, also for performance, but that's why we have a parameter in the script to say, just like for a printer, where you say, I only want to print page 2 and page 10 to 15. That's why we've added that, because, but otherwise, well, the script just reads a CSV. There is no mention in a CSV of, hey, this was changed recently, or so, yeah, it is agnostic.
Okay, cool. One thing, you have this PHP script and you run it through the browser, isn't it?
Most of the time, yes, or from a cron task. Yeah.
Yeah, but the cron task, you can run it through the browser or at the CLI. If you do it in the CLI, then you don't have to take into account the maximum, what is it? The maximum waiting time, which is maybe 60 seconds or 120 seconds. So if you have a long script, you can better do it on the command line in PHP.
Okay. But the task scheduler, how is it considered?
I don't know.
That would be interesting because it's an easy way from the interface where the end users can really decide on everything. They can pose it, like after the festival, they can pose it for 10 months. Everything is in the website. It's not that you have to remember that somebody in a cPanel and maybe the end users have no clue what a cPanel is. So yeah, it's nice when you use a task scheduler. But if you can have a look, I would be curious because maybe it's a more efficient way to launch it. Because if you have task scheduler, then you can also trigger it manually. You can say every 2 hours, of course, but you could just say that it's you don't trigger it automatically, but only manually. It also works.
We could ask Tushar. He's definitely in the community in MetaMost, so and he built the task scheduler with Benjamin. So
Yep.
it might be worth having a word with him because that might actually help with security as well. Because you can't just hit a link and run it. Interesting. Have you thought of making it into a plugin? So it will be much more defined user case, but so that someone can connect a sheet to a website and just putting those parameters in and maybe additional fields if they needed to. And that would then push into the script in the plugin and you could then enable, disable. I'm just thinking it would be a really nice plugin to get users very quickly to market. So your developer could be developing this while you're doing all your articles in the spreadsheet. I'm just wondering, I don't know of the other CMSs if they've got that ability. It'd be a brilliant article of, can you do 1,000 articles in 10 minutes with WordPress? We can with Joomla, as long as you've got the spreadsheet done. So it would be really worth playing with that.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. That could be a next step to turn it into a plugin. Here, the first idea was to play with the web service and to see what you could do with it. So as days and weeks and months passed, we added more and more and more features. So indeed, you could have a plugin with it. Somebody has to code it, of course, but the idea was also nice to say, oh, we have an independent script which is able to import content. But speaking of importing, I mean, I forgot to mention, I have a section at the end of my presentation saying, oh, this is not the only way to import. The Rolls Royce is ROCSVE, CSVI. I have to say it in English, not in French. CSVI from Roland Dahlmeder from the Netherlands. That's even more powerful, right? Here, the idea was to say, look what we can do with the web services. And there are also other tools that I mentioned to import, but ROCSVI is the most powerful one as far as I know.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm just thinking for Joomla 5, we could get a plugin and the ability for people to come to market so quickly from a spreadsheet. That would be quite an amazing demonstration. But yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you very much.